Konnichiwa minasan, Poo-chan desu, and welcome to Easy Anime Japanese Lesson 6. So we were going to do some more adjectives originally, but we decided we were going to start doing verbs. So we might switch around, do like adjectives and more verbs and more adjectives and more verbs, just so you can start speaking in complete sentences, just in case you're already in Japan and need to learn. So normally we are focused on anime Japanese, which is really casual and normal, what we do just here, like walking around on the street, not like super formal and everything, but verbs are really easy to learn formal, so we're going to start there. So using verbs, you can tell a lot about the person and their relationship within the person they're talking to. So if they're really shy and they kind of know the person they're talking to, like a student speaking up to their teacher, or somebody speaking up to their boss, they'd use formal verbs because it kind of shows that you have a sign of respect for the person you're talking to. Or you use informal verbs. It's like talking to a friend, just chatting with a friend, or talking to an acquaintance or a stranger even. So while you learn these formal verbs today, you will know when you hear them in anime Japanese that the person that's talking will have a respect for the other person. It's easier to learn these verbs when you know the Japanese alphabet or kana. It's easy to think of the Japanese alphabet as a grid. On the left side, you have what we call the vowels, which would be a, I, u, e, o. And across the top, we have a list of consonants. Where the K and the A meet, you get ka. Where the G and the A meet, you get ga. It's important to remember that ka is one letter in Japanese, not a K and an A, just ka. Ka is what it is. It won't change from ka, it's ka. You can't take them apart and take the A off and just have the K. The two rows that we care about when we're doing polite verbs is the E and the U rows. All verbs in Japanese end with the U sound. This is different than all the E adjectives we talked about last time because they end in the letter E, not ki or ji or she or anything. The dictionary form of a verb will end in U, but it could be ku or gu or ru or tsu. There's two steps to make a polite verb in Japanese. You need the verb stem and the suffix. There's three different ways to make verb stems. The first are the verbs that end in iru or eru. These are very easy. You just take off the ru and you got the verb stem. So if you want to make taberu, which means to eat, you just take off the ru and the root is tabe. The second group is called the irregulars. There are only two of them. Kuru means to come, and suru means to do. The stem of suru is shi, and the stem of kuru is ki. The last group is all of the other verbs, and they can end in any u sound. All you have to do to make the verb stem is take the letter from the u row and move it up to the e row. So ku becomes ki and gu becomes gi, and if you take a verb like iku, which means to go, you move it up to the e row and it becomes iki. If you do nomu, which means to drink, it becomes nomi. In the table, you'll notice that there are a couple of irregular letters. Instead of C, you get chi. Instead of T, you get chi. Instead of tu, you get tsu. Now let's talk about the suffixes which you add to the stems. Mas is the present tense positive. Masen is present tense negative. Mashita is past tense positive. Masen deshita is past tense negative. Masho means let's do it. And nasai means please do it. Let's do some examples where these all make a lot more sense. In anime, seeing people use these formal verbs tells you a lot about their relationships. In Bleach, when Rukia is talking to her brother Bakia, she uses very formal speaking. She speaks very, very formal. This is because she's a young sister and he's a big brother and he's also a captain, which is the highest rank you can be in the Soul Society, other than the big guy that rules all of it. She's also adopted, so he has a high rank in the family. The family is also very noble, and Bakia acts like nobility. She speaks very formally to him. For example, here she says, let's go, and she says, oh, hairimashou. Hairimashou, nii-sama. So hairu is the verb, and it's an iru verb. So you just take off the ru, which means ohairi, and you add masho for let's do it. Hairi masho. The O at the beginning is to make it extra honorific. Don't worry about that. Ohairi masho. Listen again. In this example, she says my eyes are open, and she says me ga samemashita. The verb here is sameru, which means to wake up or open. And it's an eru verb, so you take off the ru and you're left with same. And you add mashita for past tense and you get samemashita. Another person in Bluetooth which uses formal speech is Udohara. And he just does that because his personality is speaking very formal to people. Here, when he says, do you think it's true, he says, omoimasu ka. The verb here is omo, which is to think. This is a normal verb, so you change the u to i, and you add mas, so you get omoimasu. And you learned ka earlier in a previous lesson, which is a question, so omoimasu ka means do you think. A large amount of verbs in Japanese take a noun and add suru, to do. Here, Udohara says, let's study together, by saying, benkyou shimashou. Benkyou is the noun study, and shimashou means let's do it. That's suru, which means to do. Its base is shi, like we talked about, and you add mashou, and it means let's do it. Another verb you'll hear a lot is dekiru, which means to be able to do. Here, Udohara is asking Ichigo if he thinks he can do it. And he says, dekimasu ka. Dekiru is a verb. It's an iru verb, so you may change it to deki. And then you add mas to get dekimasu. And then the ka makes it a question. Dekimasu ka? In Girls and Panzers, you'll hear of another super common verb, which is wakaru. That means to know or understand. Here the student council president says, I've got it, or I understand. She says, wakarimashita. The verb is wakaru, the stem is wakari, so you add mashita to make it past tense, and it's wakarimashita, which means I've got it, or I understand. Here the teacher is talking to the student, and she's using a very formal thing. Here she's using the nasai form, which means please do it. The verb is iku, which means to go. The stem is iki, and you add nasai to make it please go. Ikinasai. Here, in Girls and Panzers, the main character Miho says she's going to do it, she's going to take Tankari. Sometimes when you're being emphatic, you use formal verbs too. To say I'll do it, she uses the verb yaru, the stem is yari. You add mas, which makes it yarimasu. The last verb we're going to talk about today brings us back to one of our previous lessons when we talked about the haji sound, which means to start. There are two verbs that start with haji, which is harimaru and hajimeru. Hajimaru means something that starts by itself. Hajimeru means to start something like a lawnmower. Here in Girls and Panzers, they're saying that more and more things are getting started. So they use hajimaru, which becomes hajimari. You add mas, and you get hajimarimasu. Things are starting. Another cool word you're going to learn from this clip is ne. You add this to the end of the sentence like ka, and it means right or isn't it? When she says hajimarimasu ne, she means it's starting, isn't it? You'll hear ne used all the time. I desu ne means it's good, isn't it? You should know all of those words. I is good, desu means it is, and ne means right. I desu ne. This should give you a good overview on how formal Japanese verbs work. Now you know when you hear these verbs, the person is looking up to the person that they're talking to, like Rukia and Bakia, or a student and a teacher, or any other relationship where one person is more senior to the other. In Japan, being senior is still very important. Your boss, a coworker that's been at your job longer than you, a student that's in a higher grade than you, a teacher. There's all kinds of ranks in Japanese society. When the lower person is speaking to the higher person, they speak politely. And when the higher person is speaking to the lower person, they speak more plainly. When we show plain verbs, we'll show how Bakia talks to Rukia. And it's really cool how showing you how these verbs work shows you a lot about relationships in Japan and anime. Thank you for learning with me today. Go watch some anime and see what you understand. Thank you for watching. Jane!